Hi everyone, welcome to part 2. Okay, Stewart has just played Queen g6, and also playable was Knight e3, which virtually puts black in Zugzwang. The king is tied to defending the g7 bishop, so there's no king e8 to escape this pin on the f file. And this move has the idea that after, for example, h5, bishop c4, followed up with knight f5, creates a winning attack. If black tries, instead of something like h5 here, say queen takes b5, now the quiet move rook f4 is crushing, with knight f5 coming next and a discovered check from the rook in the event of bishop takes d5. And if knight f5 is played instead of rook f4 here, after bishop takes d5 and the discovered check, there'll be bishop takes f3. That's why the rook moves off f3, and obviously if the bishop is able to take the rook, the effect of the attack is vastly reduced. But anyway, this position now after rook f4 is completely winning again for white, and black remains in a kind of zugzwang position, and he may as well resign. But anyway, what Stewart played was queen g6, and Villanueva answered with king g8, just electing to break the pin, because the queen has moved from its, it's allowed king g8 to be played, but this is a blunder, king g8. Better was c6, which forces exchanges and goes into an endgame 2 pawns down, but this is the best that black can hope for from this position. Best play goes bishop takes f7, rook takes f7, b takes c6, b takes c6, rook takes f7, queen takes f7, queen takes d6 check, and king g8, with good winning chances for white, but plenty of play left in the position. So king g8 anyway is what Villanueva's just played, and Stewart answered with rook takes f7, which is a forcing line that certainly leads to some enduring advantage, but knight e3 threatening both knight g4 and taking on h6, and knight f5 was stronger. Black's best bet is bishop takes d5 here, but now comes knight takes d5, and the attack on the rook combined with the threat of knight f6 check, forking the queen, wins white the exchange and the game. So rook takes f7, rook takes f7, and king g2, which is activating the king for the upcoming endgame. And king f8 just breaks the pin on the rook. And Stewart is a pawn up and was confident enough in his endgame skill to play queen takes f7 check here, again with a forcing line in mind and concrete ideas like getting the queens off the board and advancing the kingside pawn majorities. Strategically winning, but objectively better was bishop takes f7, where after queen takes f7 there's queen e4, and this gives white a bigger advantage than the game continuation, but it's easy to see why Stewart went for the winning minor piece endgame, because having the queens on in the endgame, it's notoriously difficult to play queen endgames accurately, and it gives black a lot more chances to defend. So although it's objectively not the strongest move according to the engines, from a human strategical point of view, it's definitely the right choice. So bishop takes f7, king takes f7, and now knight e3, and white has a concrete plan, as I said, to advance his kingside pawns to victory, and it's pretty much unstoppable. Villanueva got his king more central now with king e6. Next came f4, which stops the king in its tracks from advancing any further, and advancing the pawn majority immediately. There's no need to wait in this position. So d5 and now g4, preventing king f5 if d4 next, and now bishop f8, king f3. It's getting the king more central, which is a common endgame idea, of course. It's correct endgame play. King d6, and black has to look for counterplay, and the queen side is certainly the place to look for it, but moving his king away from the white pawn majority is probably a bad idea. Playing instead c6 or a6 was probably better. So now h4 with g5 coming soon. c6, b takes c6, and king takes c6 with the hope of creating a passed a pawn, which would be hard for the knight to deal with, which, you know, it's a last ditch attempt by black to save the game. So g5, and now b5, and the bishop here on f8 stops white from playing b4 now, which might have been annoying. So knight f5, which is, you know, nice and accurate from Stewart. He's playing the endgame well, and this move pretty much forces h takes g5. So now, of course, f takes g5, and these passed pawns are winning for white. So a5 from Villanueva. He's still hoping for counterplay, but the game is resignable at this point. h5, a4, b takes a4, and b takes a4. So black has created his own passed pawn, but white will get there first, and the knight is perfectly placed on f5 to support the advance of these pawns, and the bishop is unable to stop them from advancing or queening thanks to this knight. Another endgame principle at work here is that of domination, with the knight here greatly reducing the movement of the bishop. So h6, a3, h7, and now bishop g7 is the correct move, because black will now be able to queen as well, but he's still lost after knight takes g7, a2, h8 queen, and a1 queen, because white has not only the extra piece but also the initiative, and black can only hope for swindles, but he's in dire straits already. Next came queen c8 check and king b6, which is one of only two viable moves, the other being king b5. If instead king d6, now comes knight f5 check, forcing king e5 and queen h8 check, winning the a1 queen. So king b6, now queen d8 check. Even stronger was knight e6, where after a few checks the king can hide away and the g-pawn can advance, or if black isn't careful, he'll get mated or lose tactically. So queen d8 check, king c6, and after this move Villanueva finally resigned, presumably seeing that he had allowed queen f6 check, which is forcing the queens off the board, after which black has far fewer swindling chances. So it was a great game from William Stewart. I hadn't studied the double fianchetto opening much, and I learnt a bit in making this video as a result. It was instructive how he burst the position open at the perfect moment and simplified to a winning endgame that he played expertly. There were some chances for a quicker win, but they were complex, and I think in his position I would have chosen the same strategy. So I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any comments or thoughts. Thanks very much.